Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Okay, I'm thinking we're back. We're still clocking. I don't know what happened. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging on in there. I have absolutely no idea what happened. Also, a big thank you to Steve McGinnis, who does a lot of horror genre artwork, and he's responsible for a lot of the artwork that you see here at the Realm. So, big thank you to him as well. Tonight, we welcome back Dan Baldwin and George Sewell, and we're going to be discussing, I guess, Paranormal Pendulum and dowsing, and there's a lot of interest in that. We've had a lot of requests, over the last couple of years, and they have been on the show before. We had a really great time with them, so we're definitely going to have a lot of information coming in tonight. But guys, please remember that we do have 7 chat rooms because there's no chat room on Roku. Okay, so we have 7 chat rooms, and try to picture it like a super highway coming down into one lane. That's pretty much what it's like here. So we're going to get to comments and questions as we go along, and hopefully we can get to everyone, but it doesn't always work out that way. So we apologize in advance. So let's see. Oh, George is in. Hi.
I'm here.
How are you? How's it going?
I'm wonderful.
Good. We're just waiting on Dan. Sent you guys both a link. In fact, he messaged us, where's my link? So I figured he'd be right on it. So how are you?
Did you send Dan the link?
Yeah, I sure did.
Okay.
So I can send it again. Like I said, he went looking for it. So I was like, okay, we'll see. So let me just get the banner up while we were, there we go. Let me know if I'm missing anything. There we go. And there we go. So what have you been up to? Writing any books?
Basically, yeah.
Oh.
We're well into research for the next Paranormal Pendulum book. And I'm doing a lot of reading and prep for that, but we also got our investigative team assembled, and we've had a couple of sessions, and we'll have a major pendulum session also with our evidential mediums in the end of February. So
wow,
it's rocking and rolling, and it's going to be something.
Right. So what is this going to be? Book 3, book 4? You've got a few.
The anticipated title is Paranormal Pendulum 4.
4. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. You guys are just trucking right along. Okay. Everybody I just want to try to get some chat while we're waiting. Hey, Wayne. Hey, Zachman. Hey, John. How are you? Nice to see you here. John's been on the show before, also an author. So he's coming on again soon. Linda, the show is out of New Orleans. There we go. You're from Toronto, Canada. Not that far. There we go. Okay, somebody just binged me. Okay. All right. So there we go. So you assemble a team to do all of this. So this is something like you do. So you go to investigations. Do you look for public places, or do you go for? Sorry, Linda. You just have to email me. Believe me, I could probably help you. But anyway, yeah, so do you go to public locations, or do you do private residences when they call you in? How does it work exactly?
Well, it depends on what we're doing. Again, Dan wrote the first 2 pendulum books. The first was a how to use the pendulum to communicate with the dearly departed, so to speak.
Right.
And the second book, which I collaborated with him, was more to what do those on the other side have to say about the transition, where they went, what's going on, what's happening with them now.
Right.
And so in that book, we had a series of questions, and we had several sessions in and around Shreveport and Bossier City. Dan also several out west. And what kind of prompted that was once I realized that, oh, this pendulum, this is a fabulous way to communicate with the dearly departed, and kind of had well, there are several buildings in Shreveport and Bossier that I know staff and customers have talked about over the years of feeling a presence. Something is here. Right. So we set up some appointments with some of these locations to come in and actually use the pendulum to see if we could make contact with a spirit who may or may not be there. And it turned out, yes, there were. And yes, we were able to identify actually some of these personages. And that made real fun reading. The third book is where I asked Dan, let's use the pendulum to investigate the Shreveport woman, Lindsay Higgins, and all the things that were happening to her in her life.
Yeah, we talked about that on a last show. It's fascinating what you guys did with that. Yeah.
So in some of that research, Dan and I would go to specific locations more for our benefit than for, if you will, who we were communicating with, like Poverty Point, over in Northeast Louisiana, World Heritage Center. Where we had lengthy conversations with a medicine man who was practicing there 4,000 years ago. Now that's he doesn't. We don't have to go there to talk to him, but it's us showing our respect for the site and what occurred there. And it also, I think, kind of helps get us in a little more attuned, if you will, with that particular communication.
Sure. Well, hey, Dan, welcome to the party.
Glad to be here. Finally.
Yeah, made it. So we were just talking about, you guys are writing another book. Book 4, I think. Working on it. So basically, your series is a collaboration and collection of different locations you've been to and cases. How do you prioritize something like that? Because there's so much out there. Like, does every book have a certain genre? Like we have Lindsay Higgins, right? And what do you look for specifically? What makes the cut, I guess I'm looking for.
Right now we are, I don't want to say unorganized, but we don't really have a plan. We're pretty much being guided by those folks out there. They're kind of directing us which way we want to go.
Right.
So, in the last book, we were, as we talked before, we were stage managed by a spirit. So we've got a couple of directions. George is working in the basically the mound builder culture, and I'm out here working the cliff dwelling culture, and we're just seeing where this takes us. And at some point, a firm goal will show up, but we're not pushing it right now.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and particularly in this the current research that we're doing for book 4, it turns out there are 3 individuals who are on the other side who want to be a part of the investigative team.
That is
And
awesome.
that's a first for us. So
Wow.
that's
How do you put that out there? To say, okay, well, we have spirit individuals who want to be part of the team, and I guess to make this book happen. And so they're basically assisting you from the other side to help, get an understanding of how things work. Is that like, I mean, how does that happen? Does one just say, hey, anybody interested? Or what exactly? Because I mean, some spirits, they're like guides, right? They really want to help, but how do you connect with those certain type of spirits who want to help?
George and I are a couple of fun guys. I think they want to play.
I can see that.
I'm
going to seek you guys out.
Don't get me wrong. Our intent is very serious.
Yeah.
But we enjoy doing this, and
Right.
We don't make a big to-do about it.
Right.
It's something we do, and we show respect to the spirits. And when they're there, if they're in a funny mood, and they get that way, we join in the fun with them. I think they like us.
Why not? It sounds like you guys are pretty easy to work with. So
They probably have an ulterior motive they haven't disclosed yet, too.
yeah, that's always the fun part. It's like, what do they have in mind? So do you think maybe you guys have built a reputation over time, within the spirit community?
Yeah, over there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, seriously. Like, you never know. I've had people say to me, I've done interviews, and you can you guys, you can see the chat room, that sort of thing. And I've had people comment like, oh, they know who she is. I'm going, really? Yeah. So I'm just asking, like, is that a thing? Because I don't know. I pretty much look at things and go, okay, sure. But I don't know. Is it? I mean, they're aware, right?
I'm sure they are. I mean, I get calls and emails asking questions, from time to time.
Yeah.
And you'll run into somebody on the street and say, "Oh, I've got your book." But
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I
we're
like
not
that.
exactly celebrities.
Right. Well, I mean, like on the other side, like in the spirit community, I've had people.
I think there are people there are spirits who are interested in what we are doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're probably rolling the dice, who gets to go play with Dan and George tonight.
Right. Yeah. See, that's my thinking.
They like to talk.
Yeah. Well, I think word gets around.
Well,
like I said,
I think seriously, in all seriousness, what we're doing is very serious, and we're getting out of, despite the fun we're having with it, we are getting out very serious information.
Right.
And I think on the other side, it's information they would like to get out, and they see us as a good vehicle for getting that information out. You're being on your program is a perfect example. Not everybody can do that.
Right.
Or take that back. We're not so special. Not everybody is in a position to do that.
I think you're both very special.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So, you're welcome. There we go. So I agree with you.
Just for you.
No, I do agree with you. I think that there's a technique to it. Some people, they'll call them natural dowsers. They can just go over a grave and they would just know that, oh, there's a grave. Some people are very in tune like that. There are other people who can use dowsing rods. You just seek them out, and basically they're just good at it. Other people, you could do the exact same thing and they're just like, it just doesn't do a thing for them. Wayne makes a comment, because I was just going to recommend that. In this house here, used a pendulum to help him figure out the original layout of the Victorian home that we have. And it was very accurate. And and it was crazy, because we were just doing a restoration, and then the house is haunted and the family's still here. I'm like, why don't we just ask them what they want or where things are? And we found an unbelievable doorway that had been hidden between the walls. I guess they made apartments out of this at one point. And when we opened it up, we found all this beautiful trim work and wainscoting inside. And we're just, how could anybody hide this? but they told us where that was because the walls are all plaster.
Yeah.
So I truly believe that they're very helpful.
Well, they've certainly been very helpful with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a unique situation with the team for this book number 4.
Right.
In that when Dan was in Northwest Louisiana visiting some of these locations I mentioned earlier, there was an individual who was assisting us in setting up these locations. And this individual had some talents and sat in on several of the sessions and made some nice contributions.
Right.
And earlier last year, she died.
Oh.
And recently, if you will, she represented herself as wanting to continue working with us on this project.
That's phenomenal.
So we've got that wonderful situation of the same spirit working with us in the body, and this time in spirit. So
that's amazing.
I was impressed with that.
Right?
Well,
That,
George,
yeah.
tell her the personal connection I have. That's interesting. That brings in another aspect.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this just goes. We had a session with one of our mediums when Dan was last here in town, and the property that this individual owns, we determined that people were living there 4,000 years ago. And that's the time frame we were looking at in this book. And they had contact with what they call the sky people. And that's kind of the focus of where we're going with this book.
Right.
But in further investigating Dan's interest in that particular property, the individual said, "Oh, well, of course, Dan, you were here 1,000 years ago. You were the chief." And
yeah.
And yeah, and it also turned out that this individual I just mentioned, who's now in spirit, is wanting to work with us, was also in that location 1,000 years ago and was married to Dan.
Oh, geez, that must have been interesting. So how did that come about? Where you figured that out? Did you kind of look at each other and go, "What?" Like.
No, that was the individual, the medium. She has a broad talent, and she was just really clicking, seeing things, and just all sorts of information was coming in, and that's where she was able to make that pairing.
But that's a little bit mind blowing, Dan. How did you feel when that happened?
Well, it's curious. I haven't told my wife next door in the next room about that yet.
Yeah.
You know, even 1,000 years apart, there may be some jealousy there, but no, when I met her, in this life, I was attracted to her smile, something like that, but I did not feel any, deja vu or anything like that.
No.
We just clicked as people who met and became friends. And so when George came up with this, that was a delightful surprise, but it was a total surprise.
Right. I bet that put you in a bit of a pickle there. Like especially when you mentioned the jealousy thing, that would be difficult for some people, because I've met people who've been part of my past lives and so on. If you follow the theory that we follow each other in soul circles and that sort of thing, we just sort of role play. If that theory is true, I imagine that we all bounce around with each other, quite often.
That seems to be the case.
Yeah, we had an interesting experience. The place where I lived 1,000 years ago is a friend of ours who is now part of the team has a home out there.
Right.
And George and I went out there, and the place overlooks, it's a hilly area. And 1,000 years ago, this is where I lived. And so we went to the back porch, and we're sitting there chit-chatting, and I'm looking across to the hill. It goes down and then back up. There's a little gully in between. And I'm going, there are people out there. There's a lot of people out there. And our friend who is a healer says, well, those are your people. I said, what? That's your tribe. They're happy that you're here. So eventually, we're sitting there, and I said, I have got to go over there. y'all excuse me, I've got to go. I walked down the hill, crossed the gully, and walked into. I had a terribly emotional, warm, loving feeling just kind of wafted over me. It came out of nowhere, but it was, I called it a welcome home feeling. Just came on like that.
Now, from my perspective, I'm remaining on the hill.
You're just like staying out of the limelight, aren't you? Yeah.
Think back to the movie Field of Dreams.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love
and
it.
any of the scenes where any of the characters are leaving the ball field and they just kind of go into the cornfield, and especially James Earl Jones at the end of the show, where he kind of goes, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's what I was seeing, Dan, going into the woods.
Dan was going into the field.
And I'm thinking, Dan, you better come back. I can't explain this to Mary.
Exactly. He'll leave me holding the bag now.
Yeah.
So,
it was a long 15 minutes where I was.
Right. Dan's just like totally
like
having a
but
journey
the interesting thing was, interesting thing was all of this information came from different sources.
Right.
And when we went out to the location, I had that overwhelming emotional experience. I mean, to me, it confirmed the fact that, we're onto something.
Right. Right. Have you guys worked? Like, have you done a book or maybe think about doing a book that is strictly past lives? Like, have you tried that with other people as well?
I have done, I'm a registered clinical hypnotherapist, so I've done.
I'm just going to put up comments while you talk.
So I've done that.
Right.
But now George and I haven't really explored doing that. We might. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a tool that's available to us because of Dan's skills, if the occasion calls for it. But as far as pursuing it as its own self, haven't really thought in that direction, because there's so many wonderful books out there on that.
But it's so fascinating. I think if people who follow your work might find it really interesting to see how you guys do it.
If there's an angle that's fresh, we would certainly give it thought.
I mean, let's face it. We know the spirits, like the dead speak. They really do. I have worked with a lot of people through the years with different forms of divination or spirit communication. And they have come out and basically said, no, this is your person, or this is who you were in a past life, or these were people. Like, I tend to feel bad because sometimes I don't know who they are. They come forward, it's like, oh, this person saying you remember this, and I'm thinking, I don't remember anything. And I feel really terrible about it, because I feel you almost have that sense of guilt where you feel like, especially if it's a loved one, you really feel like you should know. Like, it just doesn't stay with you. It's so buried, So I think it would be something really interesting if you used your technique with something like that.
Well, again, just speaking from personal experience, there's definitely something to past life experiences. I think there's several facets, but there definitely is something to reincarnation and past life. I mean, I've seen it too many times.
Yeah, especially with you, apparently.
Well, there's an interesting story about that, if you got a minute. Yeah, I don't think I've told this before, but
quite a few minutes. Yeah.
Well, back when I was getting my degree, I would do sessions, individual sessions. Sometimes I would do group sessions, because you can do that. You can take a whole group back, and different people click on different times, and some people click and some people don't. But I was watching around the room, and you can tell when somebody's going, when they're in a past life. Now, they may be going through the full body experience, or they may be just they're smelling mother's apple pie, or they may have a tactile sensation, I feel hot, or whatever, some sensation. But there was this one young woman who was just stone-faced. I mean, I said, I'm not getting through to this woman. I'm just not. She's the one that, I strike out every once in a while. So I ended the session, brought everybody back up. We're going around the room, tell us what you experienced. Somebody go, well, I smelled apple pie. I felt the heat of the sun. I thought I was an Etruscan. And we got to this woman, and she said, the Indians stole my baby. And she just broke down weeping. Oh. I mean, she was bawling. They took my baby. They took my baby. And, it was, we had a couple of ladies picked her up and we took her outside and walked her around for 50 minutes just to bring her down. But her experience was so real. And unfortunately, it was an unhappy experience.
Wow.
But it was, I mean, boy, it was, there's no way in hell you could fake something like that. But yeah, there's something to it.
You know, I can't even imagine. I mean, I think, you know, I'm sure there are several reasons as to why we come back and we are not allowed to have a recollection of past lives. I mean, how many tragedies like this, how many people have we lost, you know, through death? I mean, we lose people throughout our entire lives, people we know, people we love. If you can imagine that being a cycle that just keeps going, how functional of an individual would we be if we held on to all of that? It would be, you know, it would be fairly tragic. But then again, there's just so many loves and happy memories. But then you get into situations where you have to wonder how much of it is ancestral imprinting, as opposed to people say, oh, it must have been a past life. You know, I've had two grandfathers fight in the World War. I'm thinking, you know, and I've had Templar knights in my lineage. Like, forget the past life stuff. Like, what about, how do you know what the difference is, if it's past life or if it's just ancestral, you know, imprinting?
Well, I have a couple of theories. One, I think in some cases, I think you're bringing up something that you remember from this life. I mean,
Right.
there are proven cases where people have past lives, and it turns out when they were 12, they read an autobiography or a biography, and that's
Right.
what they were calling.
Right.
That happens.
Interesting.
Also, I think it's possible for memory to be carried in your DNA. For example, you know, you've heard somebody say, well, you've got your granddaddy's eyes, or, you know, you've got your grandmother's smile. Well, if you can carry a smile, why can't you carry a memory?
Right.
So it's possible those memories are carried in your DNA. And then again, I think there are a lot of times it's legitimate past life experience.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, because I mean, if you have a family member, like I said, you know, my grandfather was hurt in the war, you know, and he spent like 2 years in Europe just recovering. So I think to myself, how much of that do we hold on to it? Like, I imagine if somebody was killed on a battlefield, for example, you know, and that goes on somehow into the whole past life thing, and that imprints. But you know, to be hurt and to take that with you, those memories, that trauma. I'm thinking of, you know, people who come back from war and have this huge trauma, and they go on to have children. Like that trauma must carry forward into future generations, because it leaves such an imprint. You know, have you ever come across spirits like that?
Not in that context, no.
No,
No.
yeah,
Well, I
not
mean, just
that
in
context.
general, with something that's so impactful, you know, but it's not really their trauma. I mean, I've come across it, and I don't dowser or anything like that. So it's just a curiosity more than everything, because everybody's got a story, dead or alive, right? Yeah.
Well,
So
everybody's got lots of stories.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
Zach,
I think part of the answer to your question
Yeah.
is you can't remember that, because if you remembered your past lives, it would overload you. You know,
Agreed.
imagine, you know, you've had 1,000 past lives. Well, imagine losing your mother and your father and your wife and your kids 1,000 times. You know,
Yeah.
or even if it's all good times. Imagine just all of that. Yeah, the human mind can't handle it.
No, I agree with you. I don't think we would be like overly functional as individuals if we, because now you have a whole other type of baggage. Zach Man, hey, says it came in a dream to him. His past life experience wasn't too pretty. It came in a dream. It was dark around me. I felt a gun pointed at the back of my head. I said, make it quick, was shot, that my body was set on fire. So in this case, how do you know it's a past life and not just, you know, again, is it ancestral, or did you just watch a movie as a child? You know, like this is something I guess the spirits can tell you, right?
Well, yeah, that's where, you know, dowsing would come in handy there, because you could clear it up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So okay, let's fast forward into I mean, I guess a chance to get to pick your brains now. So I promise, I'll be gentle. He puts his hat down. Come on now.
Take it, George.
Do you ever come when you're dowsing or when you're using your pendulum? There are different techniques, you know, as to the whole energy thing. Some people will say you have to ask certain spirits, you know, how the pendulum behaves. Sometimes they say it's based on your own energy as to how the pendulum behaves. I've seen pendulums do crazy things used by a lot of different people, and they seem to behave differently. And the one thing I find interesting is that some people just don't really know who they're actually talking to, no matter what the technique is, no matter how sure some people are. Sounds like you guys have been doing this a really long time, so I'm going to take your word for it, as opposed to some people I know who just started to dabble. I've seen people get into a lot of trouble using pendulums, just inviting something to communicate. One of the worst families I ever worked with, like hardest core cases, was a woman whose mother used to use a pendulum all the time. She did for decades. She passed away. The family was grieving. One of the daughters, who was an adult, picked up the pendulum thinking she was communicating with her mother, and things went really bad in the house. She truly believed she was in communication with her mother, and it wasn't. It was just something trying to come in and feed off that grief, I guess. So do you guys ever come across those individual entities that try to get in there and you know, trick you, I guess?
Tell her about WD.
Yeah,
Speaking of
why does he
trick,
always laugh when he says like, "Oh, I don't know"? It's like, I don't think I want to do that one.
Oh yeah. Okay. This would be a pretty good story.
Okay,
When
so
we
for all
were
you kids at home, listen and don't try that. Okay, go ahead,
don't
George.
try this at home.
we were using the pendulum as the principal instrument in researching Lindsay Higgins, and you know what was her connection with extraterrestrials, the abductions and whatnot, and we were using the pendulum at the location where Lindsay, when she was 2.5, maybe 3, okay, her family ran a restaurant on an old train station. Family lived upstairs. Lindsay was upstairs in her room while mom and dad are downstairs running the restaurant one day. And it's a nice, bright, sunny day. And she, tired of being in the room, she wants to go outside and play in the sun. So her spirit friends open the very large, heavy, double hung window, and out she goes to the balcony. And of course, people are coming into the restaurant and they're seeing this toddler just bebopping along in the sun on the balcony. So they notify the family. They rush upstairs, bring Lindsay back in, close the window, and there's nobody upstairs who could have opened the window. Okay. So they asked, well, Lindsay, who opened the window? Oh, it was my friend Morlock. And okay, that kind of brought up, how you sure? Okay. But anyway, when Dan was in town, we went to that location and with the pendulum asked if that story was accurate. And it was, yes, the story was accurate. And then I asked, well, by chance, is the individual who opened the window present? Yes. Oh, okay. Well, by chance, are you buried in Oakland Cemetery, which is the oldest cemetery in Shreveport? He said, well, as a matter of fact, I am. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, Dan and I are going to go over there this afternoon. Would you be willing to guide us to your location? He said, sure. So that afternoon, we're over in the cemetery. Dan's using the pendulum. Do we go north, east, south, west, whatever, how many paces, and basically navigating around. And eventually we were led to a family plot of Woodworth. There was W.D. Woodworth, father, Eugenia Woodworth, wife, and his son, Robert. And it turns out that W.D.
Frozen.
was Lindsay's
I'm back.
father
Okay.
in that incarnation.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So we were drawn to, if you will, the family cluster that remained the same of Lindsay's current family. She, her sister, and her father was WD and his two daughters. And so that's how we met WD. We had many sessions with WD.
right.
I did a lot of research through the newspapers, and yeah, there are a lot of local accounts of WD. He was
Wow.
quite the
Wow.
character. He was an Irishman, immigrated to America during our Civil War. He fought with the Union Navy for a while. Then he was in the Army out in the West in the Indian Wars, where he was shot with an arrow and shot with a bullet and messed up his eyes, so he had poor eyesight. He eventually settled in Shreveport, got married, had a family, and was quite a character to talk to.
That's crazy. I love it though when you can connect the dots. So you work with a medium sometimes when you're doing this. I imagine that would I guess simplify things a little bit, because when you're talking about pacing things out, like it seems like quite a process.
We have developed a nice team. We've got pendulum dowsers, which is precise, specific,
Right.
but it's difficult to get a body of information from a particular individual. And of course, that's where the mediums come in, and they they're shown so much, and then they can real time describe it, and that it makes for a broader range of information to acquire, and it's a fascinating process.
Right.
One thing I learned back in my day, I still do a little bit of the looking for missing person. I was really heavily involved in that for almost 20 years. And the pendulum dowsing is very, very accurate. I mean, if you're looking for somebody, you can get down to street addresses. But if you can involve multiple disciplines, it's a lot faster and it's a lot easier, and you get multiple points of view. So that's one of the blessings of our team is we've got now. George and I are pretty good dowsers. We've got another dowser. We've got some mediums. Got a healer. Some business people. It's just a really good team. So we've got all that perspective working with us now. It's a fascinating process.
Yeah, and it builds a momentum, and it involves everyone present. And some individual. Oh, I got a question. You know, that Dan and I may never have thought to ask.
Right.
So it just covers a lot of territory, and it's just a very energetic and I would.
But see, you guys have a lot of years experience though. Like, what do you say to a novice, like somebody who's just getting maybe, dabbling, getting started? I always say read, learn.
Since you mentioned it, since you brought it up.
Oh, we can see it. There we go. Very nice. Very nice. There we go.
Since you brought it up, I just happen to have a copy here.
Always happy. Feel free to just, absolutely.
George and I have our books, and I have a couple of books on pendulum dowsing myself.
Right.
And you can pick up pendulum dowsing in about 5 minutes. I mean, if you can hold a rock on a string, you can dowse. Right. But becoming adept at it requires a lot of practice and a lot of mental discipline. But the actual technique, I mean, that's it right there.
Right.
That's the technique.
When you say mental discipline, this is what, because like I said, I've seen people get themselves pretty knee deep, if not more, in trouble.
You can overdo it. I mean, I've seen people in the grocery store, should I buy this watermelon? Should I buy this watermelon? Should I buy, that's carrying things a little bit too far.
Right.
No,
The mental discipline comes in like a good example. When you're looking for a missing child,
yes,
you want a yes answer. Is this missing child alive? If you think alive, you're going to get a live answer, and that may not be the situation. So the discipline comes in is keeping your mind absolutely clear, so that your subconscious makes the contact and gives you the correct answer.
See, that's what I was going to say. I think
that's the hard part.
The spirit boards, people will think the answer that they want, or and it reacts. So it makes you wonder, obviously they're able to project out that energy to get the answer that they want, or to have something say, oh, sure, I'll tell you what you want to hear, kind of thing. So keeping a really clear mind is key.
Yeah, if you're talking to a spirit of, say, Sally James, who was a seamstress in 1880 Arizona, but you want Cleopatra, if you think Cleopatra, you go, you'll get a yes answer. I'm talking to Cleopatra.
Right.
But
right.
You're creating the answers rather than Sally James, so it does you absolutely no good.
So it's possible to manipulate, the whole process. Yeah.
Like anybody. You can hold this and you can make it go right. You can make it go left. You can make it go back and forth.
Yeah.
The trick is, the skill is in keeping your mind absolutely clear so your subconscious can provide the right movement of the pendulum.
Right.
That's the challenge.
Yeah, and a technique that we use in the sessions, if I'm doing the questioning, then I will not hold the pendulum. We have a third individual who's skilled with the pendulum. He doesn't know the questions. So, there's a buffer there that kind of makes sure that I'm not going to subconsciously or subliminally influence the spin. When Dan and I are part of the same team, we'll also let somebody else hold the pendulum if possible, just to minimize that influence factor.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes we've got. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just as far as using the pendulum for information, the last over a year, a couple of times a week when I do my weather permitting, take my neighborhood walks. There's a particular spot where I will always take a photograph with my iPhone. And over the years, that phone has photographed quite a number of things that are not visual to me.
Right.
But they're in the photograph. And very often they are objects that are in the sky. Right. And
interesting.
Is the object in this photograph a bird? No. Okay. Is it some debris held aloft by the wind or something? No. Is this object, whatever it is in the sky, is it something that Dan and I would call a UFO? Yes.
Right.
And you could ask more questions, and I'll send the photograph to Dan and just let him do a cold reading on see what he gets with his pen. Very often we're complimentary. So that's okay. That's
which is good. It's validation.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say, one of the techniques that when we have the group together, like if George and I are doing the pendulum at the same time, we will sit facing away from each other. And if we have a medium, we'll have a medium sitting down providing answers, and she will face away from both of us, and somebody else will ask the questions. That way, I can't see George's pendulum. He can't see mine. The medium can't read our body language. So there's no way we can cheat. And 9 times out of 10, we always come up with the same answers.
Right. Well, and that's what gives it credibility.
Yeah.
Right. Quick question here, Tamara. Hey, Tamara, do you use different dowser? Example, wood, metal? I was taught that different metals are good for finding different things.
That's true if you believe it. Otherwise, I have wood pendulums, I have crystal pendulums, I have rock pendulums, I have plastic, glass. This pendulum right here, I was looking for pendulums at a gem store, and I couldn't find anything I wanted, so I found a necklace. This is a necklace.
Right.
I like the stone, so I grabbed it, and that is now my pendulum.
Right. Yeah.
One time I went out on a session at a cemetery. We were doing some spirit contact. I forgot my pendulum. Just bonehead mistake. So I went back to my truck, took a pair of tennis shoes I had as spare shoes, cut off a tennis shoe lace, picked up a rock, tied it off. That's my pendulum, and it worked perfectly.
Right. So do you, obviously, I'm just going to throw it out there. So do you think that your energy has a lot to do then with the dowsing, the process? Because obviously it's not necessarily just the item, but it's what you're putting out there.
Oh yeah, there's no magic in the pendulum whatsoever. It's a rock on a string. It's a hammer, it's a saw, it's a nail, it's a tool. The magic, so to speak, comes from your subconscious.
Right.
And basically, you hold this Yeah, you hold this in front of your eyes, and your conscious mind is focused on this.
Mhm.
While your conscious mind is looking at this thing, your
Right.
subconscious, that's the interface, is freed up and can contact whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, the Akashic records, whatever. It makes the contact. That's where the information comes. Then
Mhm.
download it to your subconscious. Your subconscious mind controls the finger movements, not your
Mm.
conscious mind. And that's why it's so important to keep your mind clear.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think a lot of people sell themselves short. You if you have a strong mindset, I've seen crazy things. I've seen, I've used experiments where I've been able to get a glass to go across the table, just by literally my mindset.
Mhm.
Just do this, do this, do this, do this. You know, and it's people don't realize how powerful, it's
Hmm.
like psychokinesis.
Yeah.
It's easy, you know. So good round of menopause will get you doing all kinds of amazing things, Kid you not. It's one of the things I always say, that people have such difficulty believing that they're powerful enough to project their energy to do all of these amazing things. It's easier for them to think that there's a malevolent spirit causing all this angst, than it is for them to think to themselves, no, I actually am strong enough to project this energy, and I
Yeah,
mean,
that brings up something interesting. We always get the question, have you and George run into any demons? And the answer is always no. We have never had a negative experience. And that's not to say that there aren't bad things out there,
mhm,
but we don't manifest them. We don't go looking for them. We don't have anything to do with them. We
mhm,
go in looking for a good experience, and that's what we get.
mhm.
And also, we're using the pendulum as a tool, an investigative tool for a purpose. We're not doing it for entertainment or let's see
Mhm.
what
Yeah,
happens or spooky woo woo. No,
Mhm.
it's an investigative tool with a direction where we're headed. Now we can go off on all sorts of arenas, but
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
it's a tool.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, paranormal investigators use all kinds of tools and get themselves into heaps loads of trouble.
yeah.
So, I think it's just a matter of trial and error and educating yourself. Knowledge is really important. I think, Dan, you've done hypnotherapy. You've been in that side of things for a really long time. I think you have an understanding of the whole, the past life thing for sure. People just, I think primarily a lot of people want to get hypnotized. If they're coming to somebody like you, it's like, no, I want to know who I was in another life. I think you guys have just taken it to a different level with the dowsing, because people for some reason need to see something physical. I think this is why you have a lot of gifted mediums who will use sometimes cards or things like that, because people on average need to see something. They need to feel something. It's difficult for them to just get their mind around it and take somebody's word for something. They need to see something in action. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, I haven't quite thought about it that way, but there is a human need for ritual.
yes.
And although the way George and I use it, it's not a ritual. Again, it's a tool, but it
Hmm.
does give people something that they can physically see. I thought
Exactly.
about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is just something that I have heard feedback that I've received, from some people over the years, and it's like, yeah, I can understand that need to see and feel. It gives them more of an understanding, because let's face it. I mean, it'd be nice if everybody. I mean, I believe everybody's gifted. I just believe not everybody is able to use it, or they haven't developed it, or they haven't, that maybe they're afraid of it and they're
Oh yeah,
afraid to go there. But I think it's not like everybody can go, oh, gee, there's grandpa standing in the corner, like I was at my grandmother's funeral. I'm the only one laughing because I see my grandmother standing next to her, where she was laying, and listening to what people were saying about him, like, naughty grandma, you shouldn't be doing that, and people, I had one uncle behind me who said, did you see your grandmother standing there? I'm like, you too,
yeah,
but nobody else had any idea they're going up there, and I'm just saying, you better say nice things. And they think I'm kidding. I'm like, I'm not kidding. So I think if people really opened up and had that ability and really worked with it, it would make things a lot simpler. So this is a technique that's easy, I think, for people to learn how to do.
Yeah, we had an experience while we were researching the book on Lindsay Higgins. We were at one of the locations, the restaurant location, and we had a lot of participants, and they were mostly observers, and one of them was just an absolute skeptic. You know, he wasn't being hard on us. He was just an honest to God skeptic.
That's
and
tough.
We started doing the session, and you know who I'm talking about, George. But we got into it, and he started asking questions. And by the end of the session, he's a firm believer now because he's seen it in action. And he was asking questions about people that George and I had never heard of, had no idea, and we were providing the answers.
Right.
And he was going, well, all right, well, there's something there.
Why do you think people be skeptic about it? It's such an ancient technique.
Don't know.
You know?
Some people are just scared of the paranormal. I think a lot of it is conditioning. You know, we're taught ghost stories and things like that from childhood. And what we're trying to do is say, be skeptical, be as skeptical as you want to be, but keep an open mind. And if you don't believe it, try it for 6 weeks, experiment it, find out for yourself. Don't just, sit back and go, I don't believe in this stuff.
I'm not doing it.
Give it a try.
Yeah. Right.
What you'll find is that people who do allow themselves to live to that extent tend to be very happy people. Life has such a depth and such a breadth that, whoa, this is an adventure.
Right.
So you have to have an expansion of your worldview, if you will, anytime you turn loose with any of these talents. And it does make the individual life so much richer. We saw all kinds of that.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree with you. I mean, for me, it's been a part of my life, like my whole life, and when I have people say, aren't you afraid? I'm just like, I couldn't imagine not being able to do the things that I can do. I help a lot of people, but I also have a healthy curiosity, even though I've got a very logical mind. I'll see something or experience something, and I've got to go through the process of elimination in my head. But I mean, for me, that's what works. It just filters through everything. Some people they're just scared.
And that's fine for them. Stay where you are. If it's working for you, that's great. I mean, we're not pushing anything.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things you hear most of us when we're making presentations or just talking to people, we're not missionaries. We're not trying to convince anybody.
Right.
Here's the information. This is what we've come up with. This is our documentation. Here's how you can do it yourself if you want to check us out. Find out for yourself.
Right. So you've helped find a lot of missing people. So and you've had some really interesting communications. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Would you like to hit first?
And you both jump in. Whatever. Who wants to go first?
Well, let me tell you a funny story. We may have covered this in a session before, but talking about communicating with the spirits and the spirits helping us. George and I had a real good friend who passed away a couple of years ago, Jim Reed. And Jim was big into land. He was landowner, bought timber, things like that, up around Texarkana, Texas, Texarkana, Arkansas. And Jim was having, in fact, one of your calls was about dreams. Jim was having dreams from his grandfather who had passed away, and it was one of those recurring dreams. And he came to me and he said, I think my granddad is trying to make contact. Can we do something? So we went out to the old family cemetery, which was started in the 1830s. And it was way, way out in the big woods, out in the pine woods. There was no highway within 10 miles. There was the nearest house was a mile away. Nice, well-tended. They kept the cemetery up. But we went out to the graveyard, and what I normally do is I'll walk around an area just to kind of familiarize myself with it. I'll take a recorder. I hope to catch an EVP, but that's not the main reason.
Right.
The main reason is I will have an accurate recording of everything that happened. I don't want to depend on my memory when I write it up. So when I write it up, I'm transcribing exactly what happened. So I'm sitting down. got my pendulum out, and I taught Jim how to do dowsing, so he was going to try it. I'm sitting down by this pine tree, turn on my recorder, getting ready to go. Jim comes up, says, "I lost my pendulum." I go, "What?" He said, "I can't find my pendulum." Okay, turn off the recorder. We go around, we look around, we can't find his pendulum. Well, we do the session. Turns out Granddad was visiting Jim. He was concerned that the county was going to do eminent domain and move the cemetery. That was what that was all about.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing is, when I got back to Arizona and I'm transcribing the thing, I've got the recorder up to my ear, and it goes, I hear, "I lost my pendulum." Another male voice comes in, "It's by the truck." And then you hear me say, "You lost your pendulum. It's by the truck." It wasn't me. It wasn't
It's
Jim.
by the truck.
Right.
Right.
The spirit was trying to tell us he had lost his pendulum.
By the truck.
And it's an EVP, and it is clear as a bell.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think they're always trying to communicate. It's just the living that aren't paying attention most
we're
of the
the
time.
blockers. We're blocking them out.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. That's actually pretty funny. So being scolded. You're not listening to me.
Was, yeah. It's by the truck.
It's by the truck. I know. That's hilarious. So do you come into contact with, because I mean, I've recently learned that in different forms of spirit communication, you do have extraterrestrial beings that are also trying to communicate. Do you guys ever come across that often, aside from Lindsay?
Yeah. Jump in there, George, on that one. You're
well,
closer to that than I am.
Yeah.
Literally.
In the course of researching for the Lindsay Higgins book, basically I asked, well, is it possible to communicate with the extraterrestrial who's involved with this case? Yes. Are you that individual? Yes.
Right.
And then just for reference purposes, can Dan and I refer to you as ET? Okay, sure. And we had a great deal of material from the pendulum in conversations with the extraterrestrial about what was happening and not happening with Lindsay, her experiences.
Right.
And we had two occasions where at that time we had the mediums working with us. And I had a meeting with one of the mediums, and I asked if she could. I asked what her impression was of ET, and ET presented itself, and she described basically exceedingly highly evolved spirit that has the ability to pretty much move, travel wherever it wants to go to manifest in whatever situation it needs to do.
Right.
And there was a session that Dan attended with the other medium and the other pendulum dowser. And I asked, well, ET, can you present yourself? And you can pick it up from there, Dan.
Well, this is this is the Mike Woods Park thing, right?
Yeah, this is Lauren.
We were there, and we were sitting in kind of a semicircle, and had one of our mediums was sitting to my right. I was here, then George and the other dowser were over there, and we were trying to communicate, and our medium was definitely picking up on something, and then I looked over at her. She was picking up something. I kind of looked out in the middle of the circle, and I was hit with a wave of I think what she called it was a mother love. That's how our medium described it. I mean, it was like a pleasant wave that just kind of waved right through me. I don't know why she felt it and I felt it, and George and the other dowser did not, but it came at a wave to us. And after it was over with, I said, "Did you feel that?" Boy, did I feel that. And it was, mother love is the perfect expression, and it just waved right through us.
Yeah, and when Lauren was describing what else she was perceiving from ET, she definitely saw a lot of purple.
Purple, yeah.
That was the color that she was associating with ET. So what what we gathered is not what I guess folks would usually consider an extraterrestrial would be like. They're spirits, just
Right.
like we are.
Right. Right.
Different levels of evolution, if you will, spiritual evolution or involvement.
Yeah. Yeah. I would go with that. I think that you have media that's just really, made it terrifying. And I don't want to lessen any experiences that people may have had that were very traumatizing. I tend to wonder if it's, because they sometimes make it traumatizing. Like, if someone's just gonna try to fight and like kill you, you're there. It may be really difficult and not leave you with a very good taste in your mouth. But I know more often than not, people have really amazing experiences. So when you're describing that, it sounds really in tune with a lot of stories that I have heard from people who have had encounters.
Yeah, and one thing that
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
one thing that became evident in the course of the investigations with Lindsay was her perception, like so many individuals, is that these abductions or these encounters, they're one-offs. That's why they're called abductions. It's a criminal act, It's but that wasn't the case. What was involved was a long-term, I wouldn't say experiment, but endeavor that Lindsay agreed to participate in, and that these were manifestations of that long-term process occurring in her current life, and that put a whole different perspective on it. That okay, I'm less a victim than I'm a participant, and that shift in viewpoint can make a big difference.
Oh, I can completely work with that because, just from personal experiences. Yeah, I think there's a lot that we just don't remember. Maybe they don't let us remember because it's not our time. Maybe we're not ready. I think that you're given the information when they think perhaps you can handle the information. Dolly is a conscious contactee, so she's fully aware. So go ahead, feel free to chime in anytime, Dolly. She goes, yeah, we're all basically entities, and ET as well as us. Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
we're ET looks at us, we're ETs to them. I mean,
Yeah. Do you think maybe that they're us in the future, or that they're, already here?
we bumped into that. We
We
haven't
bumped
explored
into
it.
it.
We bumped into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There's so many different theories. Everybody thinks of ET and they automatically think from the sky. They don't necessarily think that it's here, or maybe it's dimensional. So when you're dowsing,
or all of the above.
or all of the above.
Yeah, definitely all of the above.
Right, exactly. So you guys can with your dowsing, can you communicate with beings that are dimensional or interdimensional, or are you dealing with one specific realm? Where do the dead go?
I think we're dealing with multiple realms according to their schedule, not according to our schedule.
Right.
But yeah, a good example. George mentioned he'll send me photographs blind. Yeah, I don't know what I'm looking at except it's a photograph, and George says there's something in it. So I'll put it up on my screen, zoom around, try to find it, and I'll see a dot or something, and then zoom in on it, and then I'll do a reading on it. And when it turns out to be it's a UFO or UFO related object, I will ask, is this coming through a portal, or is this looking at Earth through a window? Is this craft what George and I would call a UFO? Get a yes. Is it coming from another planet? Get a yes or no. Is it coming from another dimension? Get a yes or no. So I've gotten all the different answers from different craft. So I think it's all playing out here.
The universe is very busy.
Yeah, very busy planet.
But fun.
Here's a trick question, and maybe it's not. Maybe you guys have done it. You often hear about people who go missing in all these national parks. What is it, the missing 411?
Yeah.
Have you guys tried dowsing that? Have you tried to figure out?
No.
Because you have missing people in very obscure ways, and I don't know. I think you guys would really, that'd be a journey, or should I say
Well, I mean,
adventure?
I did that for nearly, for nearly 20 years, but George and I are working in a different field right now.
Right.
But, I
Okay.
mean, that would be fascinating to follow, but
It's so
there's 100 different
scary.
directions we could follow, and we've got to kind of stay focused. Otherwise,
Mhm.
we
Right.
never get anything done.
Right. Right. Well, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to, for like a couple of decades or anything. It just meant like on an average, like picking an area and just seeing, you know,
Well,
um,
when
because
I go
people are
camping by
curious
myself,
about it.
I'll think about 411 and go,
Yeah. I don't know. I'd be
maybe I'll
all
build the
over it.
fire a little higher.
Yeah. I'm kind of one of those so caution to the wind kind of
Yeah.
people. To be just like, yeah, sure. Just go and give it a whirl and see what happens. As I get sucked into a portal or something. But it's just,
Well, again, I'm out by myself quite a bit. I go camping by myself a lot. And
right.
out here in the West, I can go places where there's, nobody for 100 miles.
Right.
And I'm leading into George's story, by the way, about across the street. Uh,
Hmm.
Several times I've gone camping, and I'm overlooking the Navajo reservation. And the point where I'm
Very
looking
nice.
at,
Right.
there is nothing out there. I mean, there's no streets, there's no towns, there are no houses, there are no farms, there are no lights. There's nothing in that part of the reservation that I'm looking at.
Right.
And I will do a technique where I will, and the nearest town is like 50, 60 miles away on the other side of the hill. So it's dark.
Hmm.
I will meditate on making contact. Then I'll do my pendulum and ask for contact. And at some, I think I'm 5 for 5 when a UFO has shown up. One time I did the session. I did my session, went to bed about 11 o'clock. 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. 1 o'clock in the morning, woke wide awake, sat up, and setting out. I have no idea what the distance was, but it looked like about half a mile from my campsite was a large, full moon sized glowing orb, just hanging there right above the horizon. Now the moon had set hours earlier, and it
Hmm.
just sat there. And I got up and I stared at it, got out of my cot, threw on some warm clothes, went around to my truck, watched it some more, just hanging there. I'm going to take a picture. Boop, went away.
A camera shot.
Which leads me into George's story.
Okay.
And George.
In the course of investigating the Lindsay Higgins case, I was really paying attention to just how everything was just coming together. I mean, the right team came together. I mean, everything just click, 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 click,
Hmm.
and it was just going so well.
Right.
That of course I
Right.
became suspicious. Is there some
God.
way? Is there some way that Dan and I may be subliminally influencing this process, because it was just
Oh.
stacking together too good. I mean, with the contacts with ET, with everything we're learning about Lindsay's past lives and her associations and the other spirits who made themselves known that were
Mhm.
also involved. This was just, okay, wait, no. So
Mhm.
my skepticism was lit up again. And so I go to bed, get up the next morning, 7 a.m. This is the end of December. So 7 a.m. It's still pre-dawn, but
Right.
sun's
This is
beginning to make,
ungodly. Yeah.
wow.
Some,
I was an
well,
early
for some
morning
of us.
riser for that
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I go into the living room and open up the blinds, and across the street, hovering above my neighbor's house, was an orange sphere, at least 20 feet in diameter. And
Jeez.
it's just there. The phrase would be in your face, but there was no negative connotation. This was, okay, George, you
Right.
see it, study it. So I studied that thing. I mean,
Mhm.
it was kind of an orangey yellow, very similar to the light from the street light below it.
Mhm.
Could see the first rays of light from the rising sun off in the east behind it. The
Mhm.
circumference was not hard edged. It was kind of like an artist with feather. Okay.
Mhm.
It was almost a shimmer to it. And I just examined the heck out of that sucker.
Right.
And it was real. It was the 7 a.m. in the morning. Okay. You really can't have many other factors as to
Right.
what is causing this event.
Right.
So But then what does George do next?
Yeah, George, what'd you do next?
Went and fed the porch cat coffee. Walked back by the window. It's gone. And then click. Whoa. Okay. I get you.
That was an experience. Right? I don't know.
The usual response for me with that, of course, would be to step outside and look at it directly or try and get a photograph of it. Those thoughts never entered my mind.
Right.
It was there for me to observe, but it was not to interact with it, not to photograph with it. And then when the moment came, when I realized it was gone, that's when I realized that I had also been given a taste of the incredibly subtle nature of their communication.
Right. How fabulous is that?
Yeah. So I never had that thought because I was not to have that thought to go outside or take a picture of it.
You're not the first person I've heard say that.
Yeah.
So, and that's fascinating.
Yeah. And whoa, hello. So I had reassurance that yes, the information we're getting is correct. It's accurate. Press on, boys. Get the book out.
Right. Right. No, I love that. I've actually heard people say that before. Like, I don't know why, I just didn't think to get a photograph. I will often, if I'm driving down, like in this area, there's just a long road along the river, and I'll just say, where are you? If I just feel them around, and all of a sudden I'll see something in the sky, like a big light go, just like that. I'm just like, oh, hey. Dolly's asking how long ago. Sorry, Dolly. Didn't want to interrupt.
What I described, this was December of
2020?
Yeah, that sounds right. 2020.
There we go. And Jackman says, I've seen orbs in the sky at night when I've driven through the Gila River Reservation along Arizona 87. So,
we're in UFO Central out here. That's in New Mexico.
Oh yeah, you are.
Again, I'm not special or gifted or anything like that, but I spend a lot of time outdoors at night. If you look up long enough and frequently enough, you're going to see stuff. It's going to happen. I
agree with you. Dolly says you were being observed, and
something else that George and I have come up with. We've got a question we've been asking. And I'll send him photos. He'll send me photos. And one of the questions we asked through the pendulum has this craft shown up just to recognize that George is watching or recognize that Dan is watching? Sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no. But often we get a fact that they're showing up. My interpretation is they're showing up to say, yeah, you guys are on the right track. Keep going, keep going.
Right. Well, they certainly don't mind you being aware of their presence. I am a big believer that if you're really ready to communicate with them, that they'll make themselves known to you. So that's what she says too. It will be a yes, because they are, they're definitely, like I said, little things that I've asked for. I see them. I can almost ask on demand. Like, where are you? Are you here? And then you just see it like that flash in the sky and it just disappears. Sometimes I'll just see a big shot of, of color go across the night sky. And I know Northern Lights. I grew up in the North, but it's really fascinating to me how you just see this flash of color and then it's just gone.
Well, the perfect example last week, I was standing out in my yard sundown and I saw a black object rise up. Now I got a direct look at Sky Harbor Airport, busiest airport in the world, and one of the busiest airports in America. So I know what jets looks like. I know what the Boeing plant where they make the Apaches is a mile from my house. I know what aircraft look like in the sky. Right. And a black object, which I initially thought was one of those Mylar balloons, rose directly up, but it did not blow in the wind. It waffled a little bit. It did not reflect the sunlight, and it was the sun had just set, but there was sun up in the sky there. And it rose for 3 to 4 minutes, straight as an arrow, all the way up until it finally just went out of sight. And I've seen lots of Mylar balloons, and they always they reflect the sunlight, they waffle, and they go with the breeze. This thing went straight up until until it disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked George about it. I said, work your pendulum. And George came back with, yeah, Dan, it was there. They were just there to show you, kind of recognize the fact that
Mm-hmm.
you were there and you were looking for them, and they wanted to say, keep up the good work.
There you go. I believe that. I do. I believe that they'll find
The
subtle
interesting
ways.
thing is, right before that appeared, I had mentally just said, hey, will you guys show up? Coincidence?
You're both in really good areas for that, though. I mean, New Orleans, come on, New Mexico. I was like, Jesus. All you pretty much have to go out there is just go, I mean, we're both like real hot spots. But I mean, you have people right now, it's like an entire movement. The whole CE5 movement is something that people are just like, oh, you mean I can just go and think about it? I've had experiences my whole life. Obviously, I got to a point where I'm like, no. And then it's just like, it just eluded me. And then one day I just said, no, I think I'd like to pick this back up. And the wording was interesting. Pick this back up, because I didn't have any recollection of it. It came back after I basically put it out there that, okay, it's time, and then almost immediately experiences started happening almost immediately. It's just like they do follow you, and they do watch your progress, and they do want to see you evolve and use the abilities that it's been bestowed upon you, whether you've developed them yourself or whether you just sort of woke up and said, oh, I can do this. But on that note, I'm going to have to do a quick station and sponsor ID before I get my butt fired. So
don't do that.
For everybody just tuning in right now, you are tuning in to The Outer Realm, and our guests tonight are George Sewell and Dan Baldwin. We're talking about pendulum dowsing, extraterrestrials, you name it. We're just sort of throwing everything in the mix there. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, who basically, guys, we wouldn't be here without them. 2 nights a week. Yes, we love them. We appreciate them so very much. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Justin Snicker, for the contribution of his voice and his music for the intro, the outro. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, dark wave electronic music, and you can find him on Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, you name it. Big thank you to artist Steve McGinnis for the creativity behind all the banners that you see for The Outer Realm. So we thank you very much also. You are listening to, again, The Outer Realm on United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM, 107.7 FM, and Roku, people. We are live on Roku. So if you've got an account, get on there and, check us out, because you can watch it from the comfort of your own living room now. I know, right? See, like everybody. I don't have all my Folgers commercials listed because I'd be playing some right now. Easiest way to advertise. I always tell people, give me a 30-second Folgers commercial. I don't care what you do. Promote yourself. Got to include Folgers, and it stays in the show for life. And our archives go into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
Well, just for the record, I had Folgers coffee this morning with breakfast.
See, look at that.
Bought it this week.
I love
unsolicited plug, folks. Unsolicited plug. I really did
it's
have
okay.
Folgers coffee
Are you
this morning.
kidding? I have guests who come back on with a cup of Folgers every can, and we really get right into it. Folgers loves us because they love how the guests get into it, and people send in commercials and they're singing. It's awesome. So, but apparently I was jamming up the soundboard. I had to remove them.
We grew up on coffee.
That's excellent, especially on those long nights when you're sitting there camping by yourself, right there.
Yeah, you want to stay awake.
You want to stay awake. There we go. So
everything at night, everything in the wilderness sounds like a bear.
Yeah. Not a Bigfoot. No. Well, I know they got those out there too. So
supposedly we do. I've never run into one, but supposedly we do. I have run into bears, but not Bigfoot. Right.
It's fine. We had a gentleman come on who was part of the TV show Alaskan killer Bigfoot. And he was just, you know, in Alaska, his job is he's a tracker. So he protects people from bears and things like that. He goes, I was just hired to go on there and just, you know, protect the cast and the crew from, you know, big Alaskan grizzlies and such. And he goes, and boy, did I learn a thing or two. So I guess, you know, something else must have been out there. And he goes, yeah, it's just definitely, I go to the woods now in Alaska and it's a whole other game. So it's like, wow. So I don't know. Again, gonna be one of those trick questions. Going back to, and I'm only going to use the missing 411 as a basis, but I mean, in any situation when people disappear, when you're dowsing and you're hearing something, when I asked earlier, like dimensionally, do you think, how do you know if you're not speaking with someone who's just disappeared and could be anywhere? Because I have had those experiences with spirit communication where a recording comes through and I'm listening to a B-52 bomber and somebody sees me and is describing me. And I'm hearing this thing and I'm going, where are you? And they're chirping off like their coordinates over the Pacific somewhere. And I'm like, what am I listening to? Have you ever had, like, you're assuming that you're dealing maybe with the spirit world. Could you be dealing with something else? Like people who really aren't passed away. They're just in another dimension, whether they're missing or whether they're just living in a whole other dimension altogether. Like, you never know what you're tapping into. When you're good, guys. Right? I can't hear you, Dan. I don't have sound for you.
Yeah, he's having some technical issues.
Yeah. Now
As far as tapping into the interest we have is accurate information from whatever source.
Right. Yeah. I can't hear you now. Maybe just click the button someplace. See? Nope. And froze it. Oh, back. Yeah, I can't hear you at all. Maybe slip out and try to come back in. Want me to pop you out and then you try coming back in with that link? Okay, I'll kick you out and come back in with the same link I sent you. Okay, we'll see what happens there. Okay. Right, so I know, it's a weird night.
I can't walking into the woods. I can't explain this to Mary, Dan. Come back.
I know, you just don't know. I completely disappeared from the screen while I was talking when I started. Yeah, so you don't really know where your information is coming from. Okay. Nope. Can't hear you at all. Well, we just have to sit here and nod. We just get to stare at your handsome face and, you know, you can play around while we're figuring it out. Yeah, so we're assuming we're speaking to the spirit world, but do we know for sure? Unmute. He's not muted. You're not muted. Yeah. But all I know is that experience with that pilot or a group of pilots. At first, I thought I was listening to something from like an old, 40s, 50s, black and white movie. And then I realized that I'm asking questions and they're giving me their rank, their position, and I'm hearing this plane and the propellers and everything's just vibrating, and they're talking amongst each other. And then they said, look, there's a man and a woman sitting at a table and they have electricity. And I'm like, where's like, holy crud, and one goes, oh my God, I think it's the Queen. And I'm laughing because everybody says Canadians have accents. Like maybe, but it doesn't sound British. But anyway, and then all of a sudden they're like, there's a door. And because they kept saying everything's black, we're lost. And I'm going, where are you? What's your rank, position, coordinates? And they gave us 2 out of the 3 coordinates. And I don't know if the planets were just lined up the right way that time, but when this communication came through, it was just It was just unbelievable. And I kept saying, they kept saying, it's dark, we're lost. They're like, there's a door, there's a light. I'm like, don't go through the door. I just had a vision of this B-52 coming through my house. I'm like, you can't come through the door. And then they started pleading. It was like, please, please. So I realized somewhere along the line, we were tapped into something.
Mm-hmm.
Like a time shift or something along those lines. I have never, in the 20 years that I've been doing this sort of thing, have I ever experienced anything like that at all. What was that? Any ideas? Because I tried a year later, same circumstances, same time, same method, and nothing came through. Never got them again. No, can't hear you at all. Maybe unplug something. I don't know. And try it again. That's just so strange how it just stopped all of a sudden. Your sound. Yeah, you can play around. We've got a little bit of time left. So, So Dolly says, there's a missing flight that landed out of their time, then took off again, and then never seen again. A flight. I've read about that. Flight. That's crazy. Again, this was military, clearly, because when I asked for rank and position, they said Major so-and-so, and call me ma'am. I'm like, ma'am, wow, that's way in the way back machine. So I'm a ma'am. So very polite as well. But I don't know. I think it's when you're communicating, you have the spirit realm. And then I think there's so many other layers that we have access to. So do they stay in one spot, or again, do they reincarnate? Do we live lives simultaneously? Are we getting advice from maybe ourselves in another time? Like there's
As Dan would say, all of the above.
Right. Easy. I can't hear you, darling.
Can't hear you, Dan.
I know. I don't know what's going on. We're all good. I see your mic is on, because here's me muting you and you're not muting. And you obviously gave the soundboard permission to use your microphone because you were talking great. So it's got to be something from your end, because you show clear on my end. You want to type? Just if you can get into one of the chat rooms on the Outer Realm Facebook, if you go there, you can type and I'll put your comments up on the board. Where there's a will. So yeah, just go there, or restart your computer. You always restart, come back. We've got like about 20 minutes. You do have some time. It's just glitching. And gone, frozen. Okay. And gone. Okay. So,
all right.
Shoo me, kid. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so out of all of the things that you've done, because book 4, that's pretty substantial, do you have a favorite that you would like to do more of?
Well, again, Dan and I have different perspectives on writing. He's a full-time author. I do it periodically when something catches my interest.
Right.
Certainly
right.
This Paranormal Pendulum series, we're really focused on 3, and we're really rocking and rolling on number 4, and we'll just see how that goes. Right. I also have written some nonfiction in a similar venue, if you will.
Okay.
Return at the Point is the primary one. I'm writing a prequel to it, and I've got another book coming after it. So I'm going to have three series there. It covers all of this.
Right.
It's, again, fiction. It's a good yarn, but it's got a lot of actual material in it.
Right. Right.
So that's kind of my interest in writing.
Right. But even like dowsing, like you guys have obviously been in all kinds of different locations, and is there something specific that you'd like to be able to revisit, for example, maybe a location, or do you just maybe like a certain?
We're probably going to revisit Poverty Point.
Okay, what's Poverty Point about?
That's the World Heritage Site over in Northeast Monroe.
Oh.
That was the largest mound building community. I mean, it's a major site. Had trading all the way from Florida up to the Midwest. Very well developed area for a long time.
Right.
But we were focused on a time from 4,000 years ago with this one individual who was, if you will, the medicine man. His name is Jacques. And
wow.
Our
The fact
interest.
that you can remember that is very impressive.
We're going to revisit that, particularly for book 4, because Jacques' role, one of his roles in the village, he was the liaison between the villagers and the sky people.
Wow.
And we're exploring, who were the sky people? All civilizations around the world. You get to their creation stories, and invariably you've got their ancestors were visited by the sky people or the star people, and that's kind of the thrust that we're going on.
How fascinating!
So it's just it's a really great place to go. Poverty Point. I mean, it's got rich history, very well maintained. And
you said up by Monroe. That's Connecticut?
Yeah, it's by Epps. It's a little north of Monroe.
Wow. Have you guys thought about have you heard about America's Stonehenge out that way? And they have a lot of mounds as well, tons of mounds.
Buku mounds.
Yeah. Because Dennis Stone has been on the show. I could hook you up if you haven't been. It's open to the public, but it's like fascinating place. If you guys love that stuff, like those kind of locations, that you might actually really dig that. Okay, speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yay!
Wow.
Gotta go. Been fun.
Yeah.
Did you miss me?
Absolutely. Like, where's Dan? Oh, very good. So you just, restart was perfect.
Don't know what. I think WD was playing with us.
I don't know.
He has a history of that.
Yeah. So what did I miss? Where are we?
Well, I was just telling George, because he was talking about mounds. If you guys had ever been to America's Stonehenge out there, they have loads of mounds. I mean, huge. And Dennis Stone, who's been on the show, is easily somebody I can connect you guys up with if you ever feel you want to delve back into that sort of research, because it's old. They're uncovering things. It's a huge site, and I mean it's been active for 50 years. I mean they've had Leonard Nimoy actually for In Search of filmed there, so we're going really far back. And there's a lot of paranormal shows now that are taking an interest in it. So there's obviously something there that is of interest, and that they see things in the sky. A lot of things you guys are describing. This location actually they do experience it.
Well, one of the things we're exploring again in book 4 is George over there is in the mound culture. So he's exploring that end. I'm way out here with the cliff dwellers. So we're going to compare their sky people with our sky people, and we're probably going to find they're the same group of people. But it'll be interesting to compare different cultures from different times, vastly different times, and see what we come up with. And some of that will be the mound builders. Yeah.
That to me would be really interesting.
Yeah, and like we had direct communication with ET for book 3. We have direct communication with a sky person for this particular book, and that's why we're really looking forward to having the session at the end of February, where we'll have both of our mediums there, plus the pendulums, and we're just going to, what have you got to say? And we'll get that.
Have you guys thought about doing like a documentary?
Not really.
Oh, yeah.
No, like just filming some of your things, some of your events. Like you're saying, like we're going to put everybody together, and almost like a
Well,
virtual
the
paranormal
thing, yeah, the
pendulum.
thing about the pendulum dowsing is the information is astounding. The process is pretty boring. I mean,
Right. Right.
basically, you would have an hour of this.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, you
Right.
would have to have a huge recreation budget.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not a spectator sport.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it would be fascinating because I've done those things. So I like with
yeah,
the pendulums, and I know it's, I mean, just to look at it, some people are really fascinated by it, but some people are just like, but I think it's the information that comes from it. When you
yeah.
can
It's the
be
information. It's not the
substantiated by
pendulum.
mediums and such, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, a pendulum, tarot cards, crystal balls, dreaming. It's all the same.
Yes, yes. Well, I'd say like forms of different, communication is, um, obviously there's a lot of different ways, whether you're spirit boards, whether, I mean, God, you can get phone apps now that allow you that communication. Sadly, because there's a lot of people just dabbling where they shouldn't dabble.
Yeah.
I do think that it's great if we have, because this is a really ancient technique, and that's what I really like about it. It's something that's been going on for like forever, you know.
Yeah, the
Okay, so
dowsing goes back at least as far as the ancient Egyptians, at least.
right, right. Oh yeah, that's what I mean. It's just something that's been going on for, well, we'll say thousands of years. So you can't really discount it the way you can a lot of other things. I think what people would try to debunk or discount, of course, is the dowser in general, right? Because like
Well,
you
again,
say,
if somebody wants to debunk, yeah, the way to do that is to try it yourself, and then
Mhm.
if you do it right
right.
and you give it enough time, you'll see that it works.
Hmm.
You'll
Yeah,
find an
there's just too
individual psychic or something may be debunked, but the process you can't debunk the process because it works.
Hmm.
yeah, there's too many farmers out there with rods finding
Yeah,
water. Okay.
yeah,
Right, right. No, exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. There are people, I know here they actually, one of the prisons hired a dowser to find old graves because they were going to close it and just dig the whole building
yeah,
up, and they didn't want to leave anyone behind. I thought that was really fascinating.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I tell people, especially a younger audience, I say you may not believe this, but your granddaddy does.
Okay.
Yeah, so he went out with the witching stick looking for the water.
Right, right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and
That's true.
you can find probably on YouTube with their films, the documentary films where you had the soldiers in Vietnam looking for landmines and looking for the VC tunnels using dowsing rods.
Right. Tamara says she found her septic system. It's not glamorous, but hey, it was a
Hey, it
thing.
worked. It worked.
It worked exactly. Thanks for sharing that, Tamara. No, I think that I think it's an ancient technique. It's been used, throughout generations, proven to be very helpful. I think you guys have taken it another step higher, which is amazing, just amazing. And I think it's paving the way for future generation who may want to take it up. And of course, as we're coming into the top of the hour slowly, what would you recommend? Obviously, your book, right? Because you want
Right.
people. I say educate, educate, educate. So, what would you recommend for people getting started?
I would say one, keep an open mind. Two, try it and give it a real, honest to God try. Uh, get a good book, preferably one of mine, but get a
Right.
good book that's a basic guide, that doesn't have too much far out stuff in it. And just start with the basics and practice and realize that it's not 100% 100% of the time. You're going to make mistakes, but as you practice, you'll get better and you'll get better and you'll get better and you'll see that there really is something to it and you can use it for a multitude of reasons.
Mhm. Well, missing people, finding water, finding graves, spirit communication. I mean, that's just, I'm sure, a very small amount, of reasons to take it up.
If you can think about it, you can douse it.
People could be out there trying to look for the stars. I'm telling you, it's like a new version of the whole CE5 movement. Get my pendulum out. It's just like, So aside from the mindset, is there anything else people should be cautious about?
Why don't you take that, George?
I just don't want people on my show getting into any like mischievous problems. It's playing your stupid show.
Don't go looking for it, for one thing.
Yeah. Again, in my experience, as well as mine and Dan's experience, we're using the pendulum and we're using these investigative sessions for a purpose. We're going somewhere. It's not an entertainment thing for I'm bored. Let's see how many you can conjure up some spirits or something. Or we're not trying to identify specific individuals, although we do get very well acquainted with some of the spirits in the process, and that's an enlightening thing to as I would explain it, so much that I've known intellectually all my life about this whole field and the extent of the whole life process. Doing this kind of work over the last couple of years has brought that into a visceral knowing, and that's the difference, at least for me.
That's a good way to put it. It becomes
real.
like second nature. Once you get it, you get it, right?
Yeah, you get it. So
and if you don't get it, maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
If you don't get it, you probably won't do it, and that's okay. Don't force it. You don't want to.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's when you get into mischief, people. Remember that.
Well, yeah, George brought up a really good point, though. I mean, using the pendulum dowsing technique is a great way to confirm what you already know in your gut. That maybe you're afraid to face, but people, they say they don't believe in spirits, but they know they're out there. They know. This is a way to turn that fear and that belief into knowledge.
Right. I think so. The sixth sense.
Well, yeah, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's very religious. I said, one of the fundamental beliefs of your religion is life after death. Yes, of course. Well, here's a way that you can prove it takes it out of belief. You can prove fundamental belief, a fundamental fact of your religion. You can prove it.
They don't want to hear that.
Don't want to hear that. Don't want to hear that.
No, they don't want to hear that. No, I mean, I have a friend who's a Christian minister out of North Carolina, who's also a theologian. So it was interesting topics of conversation. But even at that point, I could only take it so far. It just, you hit that roadblock. And it's interesting because they're so staunch, and passionate about their beliefs. But I think sometimes, we hinder. As human beings, we hinder ourselves if we believe too strongly in one thing and not enough in everything.
Yeah,
you can say that because you can do that and you know it.
This is true.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I told my friend, I said, you're not afraid of ghosts. You're just afraid there might be ghosts.
Well, I mean, I think because depending on the level or which type of Christianity, some of them are really hardcore. They don't believe in ghosts at all. They believe everything is a demonic entity that portrays itself as a spirit individual, right? So there's so many different. Yeah.
Yep. What you believe is what you experience.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. It's like you say, if you Dan was saying, if you put it out there, right? Don't put it out there. Because it does come back at you. So, okay, tell everybody where to find your books and how to basically find you guys. I've got your websites all scrolling across here, but let's start with the books.
That's the simplest way for me. Just go to the website, click on a cover, and it'll take you where you need to go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All my books are in ebook and in paperback, and just go to the website or go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Kindle, wherever you buy your books. And there's a link there, and on my websites, my email address is on the website if you want to contact me directly.
Excellent. So that's the easiest way then. Well, guys, thank you. We did it again. A little bit of a technical error. First with me at the beginning of the show, then with Dan. But, George held down the fort. It's all good. I know. Woo. We did it.
That's George's purpose here, to hold the fort.
Exactly. So it's okay. You have little bits and pieces there with George. Yeah.
It worked. It was a great show. Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a pleasure, guys. It's
good
always
fun.
a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun. And I know the chat room loves it too. Look at that. Tamara's like one of our regulars. So she would
Thank
have
you,
seen you the
Tamara.
first time around as well. But thank you for joining me. And of course, as always, I will be in touch. I'll make sure you guys have all the links for the audio and the
Good.
video. And that way you
Wonderful.
have it to pass around.
Wonderful.
Excellent. So thank you very much again for joining us. And I will be in touch, gentlemen. Thank you for the entertaining evening and the wealth of knowledge. It was fantastic. All right.
Right.
It was
Okay, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, everybody, we have come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. These guys were just awesome. They're always a lot of fun. Take away the technical difficulties. Gosh, honestly, it must be the night for it. But nonetheless, we persevered and got a lot of info out. Thank you to everybody in the chat room. It was always so much fun. You guys make it that much more fun. So thank you. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for being a sponsor and having faith in us yet again. So thank you. We appreciate you so very much. Big thank you to Dr. Snick, Justin Snicker, for your voice, your music, for the intro and the outro. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis for your amazing talent and the artwork. We appreciate you so very much. Guys, wherever you're watching tonight, please follow, like, subscribe, whatever the case may be. We appreciate your support so much, and we continue to thrive and continue to bring you the best that we can bring you. So thank you. If you want to give us an email, maybe you want to see a guest, maybe you want to be a guest, whatever the case may be. Maybe you love us, you hate us, whatever the case may be, we love you anyway. Please do so at the Outer Realm contact@gmail.com. Again, the Outer Realm contact@gmail.com, or go to the Outer Realm Facebook page, just click on the email button. And we don't do just Messenger because it just gets too overwhelming with messages. So this really is the best way. Now, tomorrow night, guys, we have something that we have not done before. This is going to be the first time ever. It's kind of like a double whammy Thursday. So you're getting two shows. Yes. So first off, the Outer Realm is going to be welcoming back dear friend Nathaniel Gillis. And we're going to be discussing the alien deception, how the phenomenon is playing by its own rules and hiding behind our ignorance of it. I thought that's kind of interesting. So that's going to be the regular 2-hour show. Okay. After that, at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, we're going to have a 1-hour special with the return of Brian Allen. And it's only going to be 1 hour. And he's going to be discussing his book, The Book of Secrets. And holy crud, I have been reading The Book of Secrets, okay? And it's like, it's pretty bloody amazing. I have to say, I don't amaze that easily. I just sit back and I pay attention. And he is so thorough in all of his books. And you'll have seen him on here with Barry Fitzgerald and The Deception of Gods and Men. That book, we had to do a 2-parter because it was so amazing. This is kind of one of those books that's we're going to sort of condense. And I can assure you it's going to leave you going, I need to get this book. And I don't say that lightly because we have a lot of amazing authors that come on the show. It is going to be a really good one. So, guys, you're going to have a double whammy Outer Realm tomorrow night, 3 hours of Outer Realm. Doesn't get better than that. Anyway, good night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. And y'all behave even a bit.